Hi, everybody, and welcome. My name is Ben Zaleski, and today we're going to be talking about multimedia presentations and how they relate to 21st century skills, as well as metagaming, and just kind of learn about how they're useful tools to be used in classrooms. So I provided a table of contents to start off the presentation just to help provide an idea of what we're going to be discussing throughout this presentation. So first, we're going to talk about what are multimedia presentations, what 21st century skills are targeted through multimedia presentations, how to assess the skills gained throughout multimedia presentations, how does metagaming enhance students' learning experiences, and then incorporating these multimedia presentations into your classroom. So to start off, what are multimedia presentations? Well, you've probably encountered them several times. They're very common in the 21st century. I would say they're more common in my experiences at higher levels of education, such as in college settings versus our high school, middle school, elementary school settings. But they are very beneficial at those high school and middle school levels that we should start incorporating them as educators into those classrooms. So to start off, a multimedia presentation is a presentation that uses multiple forms of media. Pretty self-explanatory. And here's a hint. This presentation right now is a multimedia presentation. You have myself speaking, that's one form of media, as well as I have a PowerPoint presentation going on in the background. That's a second form of media, making it a multimedia presentation. And there are different forms of media that can be used in multimedia presentations. It just doesn't have to be me speaking and a PowerPoint. It can be different forms of media. You could have a student talking in front of the class while also they have a video that they're going to play as part of a presentation. Now, you may have a student just doing a speech on his own, no forms of visual or any form of media. That's not a multimedia presentation. If they were to add a PowerPoint, maybe a video with a little skit, something like that, that makes it a multimedia presentation. And the reason why they're great is they help break up the class and increase engagement. Students, they tend to get bored or they lose focus when a class is simply listen to the teacher lecture, take a quiz, repeat. It gets really boring. Incorporating multimedia presentations, whether it's yourself as a teacher using a multimedia presentation, or it's the students presenting their own multimedia presentation, highlighting what they've learned. It really helps break up the class and increase engagement. Now, the great thing about multimedia presentations also is that they can be done solo or they could be used as a part of a group. So you could have a student do it on their own, you could have all your students do it on their own, or you could break them up into groups of 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. You can choose how many people are as part of it. You could even have some groups of 4 and some people do it on solo. Really depends on what you're looking to do in your classroom. And then finally, multimedia presentations are found that students view these kind of activities as engaging, they fostered learning and creative experiences, and they've gained additional skills. This is a quote from a research study done about pharmaceutical students that used multimedia presentations as assessment method versus an actual test. These are pharmaceutical students that are preparing to become pharmacists in the next couple of years, and they found that just doing this simple form of learning instead of tests is extremely valuable and helped create a more engaging environment for them. So now I'm going to talk briefly about what are some of the 21st century skills that are targeted. Now, there's 2 studies that I am mainly going to be highlighting in this. The first one is a study from Hong Kong about using multimedia presentations in classrooms, as well as another study that is the one specifically related to pharmacology students. So the first 21st century skill highlighted is collaborations. So it's pretty simple, having students work together to create and present their presentations. So this involves having the students use group work. They are building collaboration skills by doing group work and creating these presentations. And that is something that they will be able to value and use further on in life, and it is something that is extremely valuable. Next up is creativity. You want to allow your students to be creative. Don't limit your students to particular platforms such as Canva, PowerPoint, Prezi. Allow them to choose what kind of media they're going to be using in their presentation and how they plan on using it. Maybe some students are going to want to make a little skit that could be funny talking about a topic, and maybe some students are more comfortable using Canva and making a more creative presentation that way. Allow your students to have a say on how they want to be creativity, and you will really get a variety of presentations, and you'll be able to learn information and see it highlighted in ways that you may have not thought of before. Next up, they're going to gain digital literacy skills. So students are going to become more aware of finding reliable information and how to correctly source this information. It is important for you as the teacher, though, to highlight that this is an important step as a part of their multimedia presentation. They need to have sources that are backing their information. It isn't just something simply where they're going to talk about their opinion on something. It's great to include their opinion, but they need to have content and information that backs it to make it a credible presentation. And then finally, the final 21st century skill that is targeted mainly is communication. And I provided a quote from the study in Hong Kong. This is a interview they had with one of the students in the study. And I provided a quote about it where the student says, when you're just talking in front of people, you don't need to think about what mistakes you made, and no one will remember what you have said afterwards. But if people watch the video, they can notice something. For example, when you are nervous or when you will make some mistakes. So what the student was saying was that if you have a multimedia presentation and they just do it in class, end it there, the presentation's over with, it's not going anywhere, students aren't really going to focus on it. They're not going to notice that maybe student A was extremely nervous in the presentation, and it's going to be less memorable. This is where you as a teacher need to create a space where these presentations can live on past the initial presentation. So that could involve creating a discussion forum where the students are posting those presentations they created on the discussion forum for their other students to view them later on. This will really help enhance those communication skills because students are going to want to make sure that their presentation is concise and that they have great speaking skills through it, and that they really are trying to communicate the information that they are providing. So next up, there we go. We're going to talk about assessing multimedia presentations. So I broke it down into three main categories. First, we have multimedia presentations in general. This information, or the two main assessments, are provided from the Hong Kong study. They think it's important that a teacher assesses multimedia presentations on the use of visuals as well as video consistencies. So with the use of visuals, are the visuals that the students provided, are they beneficial to the presentation? Are they contributing and helping the learning experience? Or are they just kind of there to have a visual? You really want to encourage students to have valuable visuals that are used in the presentation. And then for video consistencies, is the video continuous? Do you see some errors in the videos? Can you tell the students are nervous? Information like that is valuable to assess in these presentations. Next up is the specific content. This is applicable based on the subject that you are teaching. It changes from history teachers, English teachers, math teachers, science teachers. It changes based on what subject you're providing. So an example I provided is, say you're a biology or a chemistry teacher, and you're doing a multimedia presentation on lab safety. Does Group A's presentation on lab safety procedures actually follow the guidelines established, or are they just kind of making up these guidelines? This is what you're here, what you're assessing changes based on what the subject you are covering and the goals of it is. Then the final area of assessing is these 21st century skills that we want students to gain as a result of doing these multimedia presentations. So we have creativity, which that can be assessed on, are students coming up with new valuable ways to display this information? Are they really putting work into it? Or are they just kind of putting up either like a Word document with some words on it or a black and white PowerPoint presentation? Are they actually being creative with it? Next up, communication skills. Can you tell that they know what they are talking about? They're explaining it well and they don't sound nervous about it? Or is it kind of hard to understand what they're trying to communicate to you? And then finally, communicate or collaboration skills. I provided a few independent little assessments that are provided along with collaboration skills. So something that's extremely valuable to learn about the collaboration processes for educators is to hand out some feedback surveys on individuals and peer feedbacks. Allow your students to talk about what went on in the collaborative spaces. Did everybody contribute equally? Did some students maybe not participate and it was more reliant on one student? Let them provide the feedback to you. As well as you could also make them write some reflective write-up experiences. So maybe just a short 300-word little reflection on what went well as a part of this experience and working with others. Is there something that you think you could have improved on? Is there something you wish you did differently? And for questions like that can really help you gauge how the collaborative experience went with the students. Now we're going to talk just briefly on metagaming and the multimedia presentations. So though the presentation itself is the primary form of assessment going on, there are opportunities for metagaming to occur in these presentations. Specifically, this is when students are working with groups. They have to develop their own opportunities for them to learn and do it on their own, such as group meetings, independent research, and group discussion. And then these are the opportunities that students can use to build those 21st century skills outside of the major assessment of the multimedia presentation itself. So an example I like to provide is in one of my college courses, we would do we had 3 multimedia presentations done a semester, and we would discuss a topic of our given from a book that we were reading in class. It would cover multiple chapters, but that was all the guidelines we were given. So what my group did is we made a document and we would like write down questions or thoughts we had while reading. And then from there, as a group, we would identify what questions maybe we want to talk about that we think would be valuable for our multimedia presentation. So we created that own little game outside of the major assessment that helped us contribute and build those skills for the actual assessment going on. And then next, we're going to talk about incorporating it into the classroom. So it's really not difficult to incorporate multimedia presentations into classrooms. Most of you are probably doing it right now as a teacher. You're having your own multimedia presentations, but maybe you're just not having your students doing it. And it can be as simple as transferring an existing assignment or unit into this type of assessment. So say Unit 5 of your biology class is something that students have struggled with in the past. They don't really do good on the test that you provide on those units. So maybe try incorporating a multimedia presentation instead. Have them go through the Unit 5. They have to discuss in their multimedia presentation each main topic in that unit. And as a part of it, they're going to learn about those topics and they're going to be able to learn about it enough that they explain it via multimedia presentation to where others understand. This will help them understand the unit a lot better than maybe the other prior classes that struggled with Unit 5. And then from there, I talked about it briefly earlier, but I would incorporate an online form to post these videos. That way students are able to interact with the videos. Post class, they can watch it again because maybe they zoned out during another group's presentation. This will allow them to go back and keep engaging and keep pushing for more learning to occur outside of when the presentations are done. This can be done via Google Classroom, Blogger, Wix, and there are so many more platforms out there. All you have to do is look for them. And then my final big tip is just tailor your assessment, tailor the multimedia presentations to your classroom and learning goals, okay? They're not going to be the same from class to class. It's important for you to make it valuable in your classroom. If you just take a generic multimedia presentation guidelines, it's not going to be as beneficial as if you tailor it specifically to what you want your students to gain from it. So that would be my tips for incorporating into the classroom. And then these are my resources for those two studies I briefly mentioned earlier. Something I'd like to highlight is you may have noticed around my multimedia presentation, my PowerPoint was not content heavy. That's something that I think is extremely valuable and something you need to highlight to your students. You don't want PowerPoints that are content heavy, have everything that I'm going to say to them on that PowerPoint. You want it to be just sort of bullet points highlighting main ideas as you yourself are trying to educate the group, okay? You want the students and others to view you as the main source of information, while the other media forms are more of a supporting aid for those students. So I think that's really important to highlight. And I really hope you look at this presentation and you see the value in using multimedia presentations and you take it into your classrooms and help students gain these 21st century skills as a result of this assessment method. Thank you.